moving on. Our next team we're going to be talking about is the champions of the LEC, aka Europe, is G2. G2 has come into this tournament as the favorite to be the second best team at this tournament, as a lot of analysts from the European region have been hyping up this G2 roster because they have been the most dominant team, the best EU team that's ever been sent to this an international event because of the individual talent on the team. This is a stacked team, and who can blame them? It is a stacked team. It is a very talented team. Super teams, especially in Europe, do not win very often, but this one did, and they won pretty damn handily. They went 6-0 against the clear second best team in EU. They completely 6-0'd them, and I think G2 came in here with a lot of hype, and initially lived up to it and definitely met that all that hype that was given to them. Unfortunately, I feel in the second half of the group stage, and people will say, and a lot of G2 people will say, well, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I have a little bit of quarrels with that mentality, a little bit. At the end of the day, yes, whoever wins playoffs is the best. Or whoever wins playoffs, they'll win playoffs regardless of record. TL, no one's going to think about their regular season or their group stage performance if TL wins the whole damn thing, right? Okay, fair enough. But I still don't. I still think that completely ignoring your faults or completely putting that aside or brushing it off is whatever we were trolling is pretty disrespectful and disingenuous. And to be fair, I don't think that's really G2 themselves, and maybe that's a lot of community. But towards the second half, they ended up being 5-5. They were actually just one game ahead from TL, who I had previously mentioned struggled a lot, and they were only a game ahead, including dropping a game to Team Liquid. And they picked up the 2-0 against SKT. That first game was very impressive against SKT. They were just clean, they just across the map, playing really well. The bot lane, I was super impressed by. I was coming in this tournament feeling that G2's bot lane, with or without Mickey, really didn't make a difference to me. I just felt like this bot lane was not gonna hold its own because Perks is, he's not a professional AD. He just swapped to the role this split from mid lane. And Mickey is a great individual support player. I don't deny that. To me, bot lane and support especially is such a small talent pool. I feel in Europe, where it's such a vacuum, where the bot lanes in Europe are not great, and especially in the support role, there's a lot of just really bad supports in Europe. And I feel like for G2's case, they were just better than them. Not great, just better. They were just better than the other bot lanes, and I feel like it was good enough to win EU, but I felt like they would get punished internationally. And in the first half, they were proving me wrong pretty well. And then towards the second half, they were kind of getting outclassed a little bit by some of these other bot lanes, and it does have me a little bit worried for them as far as the bot lane's concerned. And I guess the name of the name of the game here for this team is similar to IG, is that they are a little bit inconsistent as well. Caps will be dumpstering or dominating a game, or he will actually, just be completely giving up kills and just being completely out of sorts and just zero impact at all. He'll just get smashed in lane by Faker or Rookie, or even Jensen. He got soloed by Jensen, and or other games he's the one smashing. So very coin flippy at times. Yankos, I think, has actually had a really good tournament. He was a jungler that I thought was inconsistent, but he's actually been one of the better performing players on G2. Wonder has. I went into this tournament thinking Wonder was going to be the second best top laner at the tournament. It's hard for me to say because I feel like drafting has really inhibited Wonder's influence of some of these games, but he's definitely popped off. He just got a pentakill, even though they lost that game. He just got a pentakill in one of his games, so he's obviously a really damn good player. So it's hard for me to really judge him because he has gotten some really questionable draft decisions. I know a lot of it is execution, but if you haven't played a champion enough and you're drafting it, you probably shouldn't draft it if you have little to no experience. And it's not like you're playing against a trash team. They pick the Vayne top as a counter to the Shies. I think he was playing a Kali. Um, think which is like, okay, yeah, ideally this should be a counter, but if your top laner has not played that enough, is it is it really a good draft decision? I don't think it is. If you're not playing to the strengths of your players and you're drafting champions that do not play to the strengths of your players, it is a bad drafting decision. That is my philosophy on it. Execution is a separate thing, but I think that if you are not playing to the strength of your team or your players, or not, or if you do draft these champions and you don't play to the strengths of that champion because you simply just lack the experience of that specific champion, I think it's a bad drafting decision. And execution is obviously another thing, as I mentioned, but which there was plenty of execution errors. But I think that it was absolutely a bad drafting decision from G2 to go with that, and it's against IG. It's not like they're playing a bad team. Like they're playing against IG, who is the favorite of the tournament. So yeah, some interesting drafts here. The Pike top, which they won that game, actually definitely got punished in laning phase. But once they got out of laning phase, you can see kind of the idea of the Pike and and what you want to do. Pike can take all the harass from Jace, and then he can heal it up with his passive, and he can remain a pretty low econ because his ultimate will give him a lot of that gold back. Even if he doesn't get the kill, he'll still get the gold for a kill. It's such a powerful tool. Um, his build doesn't need to vary at all. He doesn't need to build tanky. He builds the same in every role. So his items are not incredibly expensive. He builds lethality, he builds Duskblade or Yomu's. Maybe he might build one tank item for top lane, but or Tiamat, probably a Tiamat for helping out with the wave clear. But for the most part, he builds the same. So his build path isn't even terrible, and the regen helps out a lot. And his mobility and his ultimate just has a flat amount of execute range. If you're below this execute range, it's going to kill you. Regardless of how much AD he has, it's going to kill you if you're this low health. So it's always going to be strong. And the way they were playing around it was unique, and that's kind of how G2 is. They'll have these unique strategies. They'll innovate. They'll play whatever they want, and they typically do very well on it. And so, we kind of see the different playbooks that they bring out, and they brought it out this tournament, and they've had some varying success on it. Um, so that's why a lot of people are very high on this team because of their play style. They can play anything that they want, and they have the individual talent to match up against the best in the world. Caps can match up to Faker individually, and Wonder can match up against Khan, and he's even smashed Khan. So Yankos is going to be a crucial matchup here, crucial player here. But yeah, we'll talk about that in the matchup specific. But yeah, G2 coming in as the third seed. I think at the end of the day, the best team is going to win playoffs. I don't want to completely write off their performance in the last day in the second half of the group stage. I think it would be disingenuous to just say it doesn't matter completely. I think it has showcased some weaknesses of G2, especially in the bot lane. But G2 is a smart team. They know exactly what they need to do within the time. They have great coaching staff. So I think they're going to come into their series very well prepared, and I expect them to have a good performance. So that's G2. We're going to move on to SKT. So SKT comes into this tournament as the representative of the legendary five-time world champion LCK. And they have put on quite a tournament. I have to say that the way that SKT handled this tournament, considering people weren't too high on Korea, especially after playoffs, um, yes, they dumpstered Kingzone, but Griffin definitely felt more like they lost to themselves more so than SKT just dominating them. It felt like Griffin was kind of losing their grasp of dominance toward the end of the split. And people were kind of like, all right, yeah, it's KT. They're the best team all time, 3 world championships, right? Like they have, at 2 MSIs, all the fakers on the team. Um, they should be the favorites, right? And right off the bat, no, just completely no. They are not the favorites. They are not the defending world champs. They are not defending champions at all. They are looking to regain that title. They're the challengers. Straight up, they are the challengers. This is not the same SKT. This is not your grandma's SKT. Like this is not the same SKT that we have known for the last couple of years. That doesn't mean they're bad. That just doesn't mean that they are going to look different. And the expectation for SKT is to win everything because that's all they've known. They've only known winning championships, and anything less than first place for them is a failure. And that's the LCK way. That's just how it's been when you're at the top like that. So SKT came this tournament with high expectations of themselves. A lot of people put G2 over them. A lot of people, especially after last Worlds, are kind of saying, oh, Korea's kind of been slipping a little bit. They haven't adapted to the meta at all, and I would agree with you. For the most part, SKT continued that trend, and they did not look good in as far as playing against your G2s and IGs. Some very bad drafting decisions, and also just they kind of just rolled over a little bit against G2. They just got completely manhandled completely. They got dominated from top down. They were just outclassed. It felt like Faker he was trying to do his thing, but G2 just played that game really well. And so SKT found them in a spot where they just kind of got slammed, and playing this like slow scaling style wasn't going to work for them, and they did it against the PvBs G2 or PvBs at Flash Wolves and even TL. I think they really have TL's number this tournament. They've completely dumpstered TL. Um, but against the IGs where they got 16 minutes because they decided they want to go Sonateric for whatever reason, it didn't go well for them, and they got completely smashed and made history with the 16-minute international game, the fastest we ever had. But I will say, unlike G2, I think they've had inverse group stages where SKT looked kind of, they're beatable. By coming into the third day, I was like, for TL, it was kind of like, TL looked better than SKT in some of these games. They could definitely take a game off SKT, but SKT never let it happen, and they only got better from there. They did drop that other game to G2. They did get 2-0'd by G2, but the second half went they went 4-1 in the second half of the group stage, and so you got to say that is, if the IG weren't here, or if we didn't have this kind of narrative right now, we would be saying SKT look like they're about to win the championship. But because of the last year and a half, we kind of have this shroud of doubt and this plot armor from a Korea that, oh, in the end Korea wins. That was kind of broken when especially when Afrika got 3-0'd by Cloud9. That was like, oh wow, a Korean team just lost a best of 5, 3-0 to an NA team, to a Western team. That's not supposed to happen. That's not in the script. That shroud of Korea didn't even make top 4, let alone finals. That shroud that was kind of lifted a bit, and so now people are a little more skeptical. They're not gonna just completely say, well, as it's SKT, they're gonna do it. Doesn't mean anything. SKT may have dropped 4 games in 2016 and won the whole thing, but that doesn't mean that 4 years later or 3 years later in 2019 that SKT is going to do the same thing again. They could very well lose the matchup to G2. But for SKT's sake, it seems that they have adapted. Actually, it seems like they have recognized that they can't play these slow style games, and they have played fast pace, and they've had a lot of early aggression. And I'm really impressed with this team. This squad has really ramped it up for bracket stage. I think we're in for a great matchup between G2 and SKT. I think it's going to be an awesome series, and I'm really excited to see how this goes. I think we're going to have a good finals, and which is great. MSI typically has more entertaining series. Finals at least compared to some of these. Sometimes Worlds has kind of meh series. Worlds typically has great series, but like MSI, I think is a lot more consistent with their quality and entertainment. And I think this G2 SKT series should be very entertaining and even high quality. I think both these teams are very good. So SKT, how have they been? How what are they doing to win games? Well, Klid has just been a monster. I think anybody that's been watching and when they bring up tools and they bring up SKT and winning at this tournament, it's been off the back of Klid, especially on his Lee Sin. He's just super good. There's not much to say. He's just a damn good jungler. He's the way he's pathing, even in their losses against G2. Klid is doing everything he needs to do to win. You know, he's pathing up to counter gank Yanko's top lane. Like he's still doing everything he needs to. That you know, they lost to 2v2, but Klid's doing everything he needs to do. Like he is doing the things he's supposed to do, and he's winning or getting these leads, or he is performing incredibly well, even when some of his other teammates haven't been. And Klid is going to be the I think he's their best player right now. Faker is obviously Faker, and he's going to do his thing. And Faker's had a great tournament, especially these last 4 games. He's had an incredible time. He's completely run over the competition, and I think we're in for a treat with that mid lane matchup. But I think for Klid or for SKT's winning condition, I think Klid's going to have to be the guy to really make it happen. And yeah, I'm really impressed with how SKT have turned it around. And the bot lane has started off struggling. I think Teddy, this is his first big international tournament, and it showed a little bit. And I think he kind of plays the more safe champions, the Ezreals, those kind of safer farm champs. Doesn't really want to go. He does have an aggressive play style, but he has more scaling champions for the AD role. But he's been looking a lot better. Mata's looking a lot better compared to the first couple of games. So SKT really seemed to ramp it up, and they're really getting to that form that we kind of know them to do. So this should be a very eventful team to watch in the best of 5. So yeah, those are our 2 teams for the second semifinal. And we're going to be talking about the matchup specific, kind of the champions, and some of the win conditions for. So now we are in the matchup here for the second semifinal between G2 and SKT. We're going to make this quick as possible. So for G2, the champions to watch for these guys, I think it's important right now to make sure their bot lane is in a position where they are not too far behind. I think putting Mickey on a champion that can make a play around the map, um, like Rakan. His Tom Kench has been good. However, I don't want to see Tom Kench with an Ezreal. I want to see a more aggressive champion from him. I don't want to see, TK every game. I want him to be able to make plays. I want to see a Rakan. I want to see Zaya and Rakan actually from the bot lane of G2. I think that having that bot lane for G2 is going to help them out a lot in actually holding their own in the 2v2. If they can't, I think getting Ezreal is fine for Perks. Give him a safe champion and allow him to have some agency later on. He has played Lucian. He has played some of these more aggressive champs to varying success. But I think making sure that the bot lane's is an okay spot to where they don't fall too far behind. Because I feel like they've really slipped toward the end here, and I think that they really need to hold it down and really just make sure that they can keep up with Mata and Teddy. Um, for mid lane, they have good flex picks options. Both mid and top can play Ryze, so I think that's going to be big, and that can be a big takeaway from SKT. Making sure you can actually use those flex picks. I think. Wonder is an exceptional Rise player. Caps is a great Rise player. He can also play Silas if he needs to. He's got a good LeBlanc. Caps is champion pool. He can play whatever you need him to. And Maybe we'll even see Pike mid. I don't know. They like to bust out some crazy stuff sometimes. So there's a lot of flexibility in the draft for G2, and I think that's where a lot of their advantage is going to come from. And then for Jankos in the jungle, Olaf. He's an incredible Olaf player. Similar story to Xmithy. I think he needs to, as far as what he needs to be on, he needs to be on a champion that can provide pressure early game and be able to really get mid going and or top lane or wherever they decide to play to, because they can play really whatever they want to. Um, so Jankos needs to be on a champion that's going to make an impact early on and really just keep the aggression. And him versus Klid is going to be very fun to watch because Klid has been playing out of his mind, and I think this is going to be a very volatile matchup as far as who's going to take. Who wins the game. I think is going to be on the back of the jungles. For SKT, I would say that Lee Sin is a champion that Klid has been playing incredibly well, and I think that it's going to be in contention to ban away from SKT. But SKT, I think, very similarly want to pick some early game impact champion for Klid because he has been playing so well. And for bot lane, I think Teddy might look to go for Kalista. He ran it against TL. I think that we might see Kalista Thresh. Mata is a well-known Thresh player, so we might see Kalista Thresh and maybe punish that bot lane a little bit against G2. Um, For mid lane, Zir I think has been Faker's best champion. Rise could also be put there as well. I think that's going to be a contended pick between these two teams. Faker's going to be Faker, and he's going to do whatever he can to win, and that's just how he is. He had a rough start, but he's really ramped up towards the end, and so is SKT. Um, so yeah, for mid lane, Azir, and then top lane, I put Jace just because I feel like Khan is at his best when he's on a champion that can really own the lane. He very similarly to LCK has kind of just been getting dumpstered in lane phase by some people, and then some games he's the one dumpstering. So I think getting him on a character that is just gonna dominate a lane and be like classic Khan, I think it is crucial for him to uh, pick up game or to really take over a series. Now, just for the record, these champs are not. I'm not like listing these champs as champions that, as far as team comp, like they should run this team comp every game. These are just in general kind of the type of champions that I'd like to see from the players and kind of how they've been playing on this tournament. Um, and how they've been performing and the type of style of champs that they should probably look toward, or they probably will look toward, I should say. So, yeah, so those are the champions. As far as win conditions, G2 have to continue what they have been doing, and hopefully it doesn't bite them in the butt too much, but I think they need to innovate. That's been the name of the game. It helped them twice before in beating SKT, innovating, and I think that G2 are going to have some more tricks under their sleeves. Whether those tricks work is one thing, but they're going to have to innovate, and I think they're going to. That's kind of what G2 is known for, and I think that's what they're going to continue to do. Bot lane has to keep up, as I mentioned. Bot lane has to not get dumpstered, not fall behind. They've been falling behind a lot. They've been falling down in CS in a lot of these games. Perks has been getting outclassed a bit by some of these ADs, so they need to make sure that they get as favorable as a 2v2 as they can get. That's why I mentioned Zyra Khan or maybe even Ezreal, just something that's gonna alleviate some of the pressure from bot lane. And then Jankos needs to be impactful. Jankos's the jungle is such a big role right now in this meta, and you need to have a jungler that's going to make an impact on the game. For SKT, same story. Klid needs to. If you let Klid run the game, he's going to own the game. He's just such a he's just such a beast. He's been playing incredibly well. And they have to play smart and don't fall for G2's antics. Unfortunately, they fell victim to it in the previous two games. They went for some, and especially in the second game. The first game was just a really clean game from G2, but the second game, I feel like SKT really fell for G2's trap and really went for fights they shouldn't have and took some opportunities they maybe should have but didn't, or I feel like they really dropped the ball in that game, and I feel like G2 just straight up played mid to late game a lot better than SKT in those moments in that game. So yeah, overall, I would have to. This is a very close matchup. In my opinion, this man, it's really hard for me to call. I'm gonna say I feel like SKT have really shown that they have adapted to the meta, and if they remained the way that they had been at the start of the tournament, I would I would very convincingly give this to G2. But I'm gonna have to give this to SKT. I'm gonna say 3-1 because I think G2 will be a good team. I don't see this being a full 5 game series because both of these teams are very um, like hot streak kind of like when they hit their stride, and I feel like if either of these teams were to get a lead, I think they would just take it all the way and maybe drop the third game, if anything. Um, but I think if one of these teams gets going, the other team probably won't be able to keep up, and I think that team's just going to be SKT. Maybe there's some bias, maybe there's some historical factor that I'm maybe taking too much into account. But as far as tournament performance towards the end, SKT, at the end of the day, they claimed the second seed, and it's going to be a good matchup. I really hope this isn't a 3-0. I really don't. Despite what I said, I really do hope this is a really awesome series, and it really showcases both the team's strengths. And whoever wins this, I think, is going to look good coming in the finals. And I think we should have a great finals with the way that it looks like it'll look that the way that it's going to become, as far as my assumption that IG is going to win that series. I think both these teams will put up good fights against Invictus, and yeah, so that's my prediction for the series. I think it'll be a 3-1 SKT.